That's right. Today we're going to help someone with their saddle pains. We're just going to jump right into it. Welcome to Zoe's case study. So, Zoe, well, before you say anything, I just want to thank you for agreeing to do this little kind of case study. And I don't think we're done yet. I think we're in the middle of it. So it's quite exciting. So, so let's rewind a little bit for those who don't know the history and don't know that we've talked before. So you first called me and approached me because you had some issues with the saddle, right? Can you just describe to me what you felt and why you wanted to talk to me first?
So I've been cycling seriously for about 3 to 4 years, more seriously for the last 2 years. And as I've increased the volume of my training, I've found it more and more difficult to spend long hours in the saddle. And I tried to tweak my own setup myself, and it didn't really make much of an improvement. And the pain was so concentrated on one area of my labia that I found that it was something to do with the saddle. I knew it was something to do with the saddle. So I thought that trying different saddles could be helpful, and if not, have an idea of what kind of saddles I could try on my own, just to experiment and see if I could find any improvement, to train better and spend more time on the bike.
Yeah, and so can you describe the pain that you were feeling? So the outside of the labia, and so did it increase when you went on the drops? Did you see yourself spending more time on the tops to avoid that pain?
Not particularly. I think the pain was pretty constant no matter what kind of position I was in. The issue became really a problem when I went to training camp with my cycling club last year, because I didn't want to miss out on any cycling. We were there for only 1 week. So I did all of the rides every single day. And no matter what position I was in on the bike, I was just in a lot of pain, and that really ruined my enjoyment of it.
Yeah, exactly. Can you show us your saddle? The culprit. The culprit. So that's what saddle? That's a LaB saddle, right? One of the standard saddles that comes with the bike.
Yeah, so that's the standard one that I had, and then I changed that one for a standard cube saddle.
Yeah.
That came with a second-hand bike that I bought, which is my time trial / aero bike. And the cube was an improvement, but not by much. And I ended up tilting the nose quite a lot. I think it looked a bit like that. And it did relieve the pressure a lot. So that made it better from this point of view. But then I felt that my weight was being put onto my upper body, and I was getting tense in the shoulders and having lots of weight on my wrists. And I couldn't take my hands off the handlebars either, like to put a jersey on or something, because I would just slide off.
Slide off the saddle,
And
so, did you have any pain on? Did you have any pain on the hands? Any inflammation on the wrists because of that tilting?
Not necessarily. I'm sure you can't see it but I get 2 little calluses on just the inside of my wrists here. I think it's from rubbing and from the pressure. It hasn't really been a problem lately because I got used to it. And with trying the new saddles, I haven't had that at all. So it's not really something that...
And so so you called me, right? You told me all of that. I asked to see you on the bicycle. Obviously, these things at a distance are difficult, but I was hoping to pinpoint really obvious mistakes in your fitting, which you didn't seem to have. So it was all about the saddle, which was good, which was, we could actually address the saddle. So did we characterize those saddles that you have? Did we say that, were they curved or were they flat? Did we talk about that? Because I can't remember.
Did talk about that a bit, but you also did not want to influence me too much about which saddles likely to be good or not, and what kind of things I was likely to experience, depending on which saddle
I do that a lot. So I didn't tell you anything, did I?
No, you said here are saddles. Some are curved, some are flat. Some will be good, some will probably not be so good. And then I tried them and went with that, basically.
Which saddles? So, yeah, and then I suggest a couple of saddles based on what you told me, right?
Yep.
And I left them in the car. I unlocked the car. This was very, very quarantine-like, was it?
Yep.
This is all thought out, you know? I left the saddles in the car. I unlocked the car. You took the saddles. And then you tried them, right?
Yep.
So, and which saddles did I tell you to try? Can you show them?
Okay. So, number 1, Specialized Power Pro, here. Number 2, which I didn't put in the right order, Sale San Marco, there. Number 3, Syncross Savona. This 4, Specialized Mimic, which is a women's market saddle. And the last one, and the only blue one, the Pro Stealth.
Yeah, because I have.
I can see.
Because that is my. Actually, that's my saddle. I have that one over here. That is actually my saddle. So, well, they're all mine. So, so I gave you 2 specialized power.
Yep.
1 with a cutout, 1 with the mimic kind of thing.
Yep.
And then I gave you the San Marco short fit.
Yep.
Right? And the only saddle that kind of resembled a classical saddle in the sense of those 2 that you showed me in the beginning was the Savona, right? Right. And then I gave you a protocol. Okay?
Yep.
I gave you a very detailed protocol because we wanted to know if any variances, any results of the testing, we wanted to control as much as we could, right?
Yep.
So that was the intent of the protocol, to control everything else. So we, any differences that would arise would come from the saddle, right? Do you remember the protocol?
Yep. So, and I'll send you a picture of this. These are my.
You wrote it down. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So I did a first session with all of the saddles to just find out their coordinates in space. So tried at first with the current setup that I had in terms of seat height and reach, and then dialed it all the way back and all the way forward, try and find out. They have quite different stacks as well. So some, I think the progress.
So that's the difference between the rail and the top of the saddle, right?
Yeah.
They do have,
And they all tend to be, all of the saddles apart from the Syncross were thinner and shorter than the ones that I had. So in the end, I had to increase my saddle height quite a lot and move them forward quite a bit.
Forward, yeah.
I took...
And so, tell me something. With each saddle, let's just focus on one saddle.
Yeah.
With each saddle, you tried all the way forward, all the way back. Then you got an idea of where you'd like to sit. Is it closer to the front or closer to the back? And then you tried several positions until you thought, this is a good position, right?
Yep.
Did you experiment with tilt?
No, I tried. It was a bit hard with some of the saddles, especially the Mimic, which has a little curve at the back.
Yeah.
To know what flat meant.
Yeah.
So we put a level on the nose, or where the bit where we would be resting most of the weight, and try to go for level with that, and then tilt a tiny bit, a couple of degrees, no more than that.
As long as you're consistent, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're consistent, because what matters is that you attribute a quantitative variable, meaning degrees, to your feeling, to your perception of comfort. So if you put the level here and you get, I don't know, -3 degrees, but if you put it there and you get -17, doesn't really matter, okay? Because the -17 is associated to your perception of comfort. So as long as you, in each saddle, you put the level in the same place, that's okay, okay? Right, and then you went outside. So, and then you've got those coordinates. So each saddle, you have a coordinate, right?
Yep.
Each saddle, you have a stack and a reach.
Yeah.
And then you took them outside and then you tried them on the turbo, right?
Yeah. So turbo first. Well, I did. So you suggested doing 3 sessions on one saddle before swapping to another. So what I did is that I paired them together. So I did the 2 specialized together on 3 days. So 2 sessions, 1 day on one saddle. Then second day, 1 session on the first saddle, 1 session on the second saddle. And then third day on the second saddle.
Yep.
And then I could, especially the middle day, I could compare them quite well. And in the end, I found that I could get comfy, apart from the Syncross, I could get comfy on all of the saddles. And I would have been happy, you know, if I had bought a bike with these saddles or if I had acquired these saddles in some way, I would have been happy on all of them. And there were ways to position myself that made sense.
Yep.
But it's when I compared them that I find it quite interesting, because even if individually I would have liked them potentially the same, when I compared, I think they fared quite differently, especially outside.
Yep.
So the middle day on the turbo and the days when I could take, well, subsequent days outside were the most beneficial to compare the saddles in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you do all the saddles turbo first and then all the saddles outside? Or did you do the first 2 turbo and then outside?
I didn't really set out to choose that deliberately. I went a bit with the weather and how and when I could plan my sessions outside. In the end, it ended up being that I tried the first half of the saddles on the turbo, then took them outside, and then tried the second half and took them outside.
Okay.
The Syncross is the only one that I haven't tried on the road because I just didn't like it at all. And running out of time, I chose to do another session on the Power Pro to compare it to the Pro Stealth rather than do a session on the Syncross, which I thought wouldn't.
And so, do you have an idea of the saddles that work in the turbo as opposed to the saddles that work outside, or do you think they're all in the same basket? The saddles that work in the turbo will work outside, or the saddles, or vice versa?
They work differently for the kind of ride that I'm doing. I think
Right.
I think that would be the most. If I like one on the turbo, I tend to like them on a flat ride outside, or a ride that doesn't have much difference in positioning. Like I just go and cycle, and it's quite homogeneous.
So I would imagine that's the short fit?
Yes. Yeah, that would be, yeah.
Okay.
There's some marker, yeah.
So, okay. Before we go on, can I have your top hierarchy of saddles?
Yeah.
The one, and you can have 2 in the first place, which you haven't decided.
Power Pro and Pro Stealth would be at the top, probably around similar.
All right. And you don't know how to decide from. Okay.
I think I would go for the Power Pro. But the Pro Stealth was very good too. Both of them were the ones that I could just sit on and forget I was testing a saddle.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I said, right? When you go outside, the purpose of having a saddle is so that you forget about it and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So Power Pro and Stealth.
Yeah.
Number 2.
The Mimic.
The Mimic. Number 3.
The Celeste Marco.
Short fit. And lastly.
And then Syncross last.
Lastly, the Syncross.
Yep.
So, can you show the Power Pro and the Syncross?
So,
okay, I didn't tell you why I gave you the bell car, not the bell car, the Savona.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was on purpose, and I had a sense that you wouldn't like it. And you were a bit concerned with that as well, weren't you? Oh, I don't like this saddle. I don't know, but I did it on purpose because we needed to know what was the right, what was the right path for us. So we actually needed to know where the wrongs were. So if you look at those 2 saddles, they're completely different, right?
Yeah.
One is stubbier than the other one, and you didn't like the Syncross at all. But you're undecided between the Stealth and the Power, right?
for these two,
Okay.
which are quite similar in many ways.
Yes. Well, before we go into that, tell me how you felt. So, if we talk just about the top three, the Sele San Marco, the Mimic, and those two, okay?
Yep.
What did you like about the Sele San Marco, the short fit?
So the short fit was the one I put. I think it's a tiny bit curved. There's a definite slot in it, and so you get on the saddle and it guides you in a definite position. And once you're in it, you don't really want to move too much.
Yeah.
So I suspect that maybe for touring on a flat country, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And on the flat bits that I tried it on, it was perfect. But then on my ride, I went to the wind farm, so it's definitely like uphill and then downhill for the rest. And on the downhill bits, when I was on the drops, I found it a bit more difficult because the nose was a bit harder and digging into me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had to sometimes push myself back to get back into that little groove in the middle. But that's not nearly as much as a problem as what I had before. So I would still consider that a massive improvement from what I had.
So as soon as you go on the drops, you rotate the pelvis forward, the center of mass goes forward, and then you find that the saddle has, I'm just going to take, this is a very exaggerated, but it will serve the purpose. So as soon as you go on the drops, you would find that little bulge there that, this area here that was just driving into your perineal region, right? But on the tops, it was fine because you were nice and comfortable. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered that saddle for long rides or for turbo rides where you're just on the tops and not, not doing anything?
Yeah.
Or do you think do you not like it for that?
No, I would like it for that. I think if I had a bike that I used specifically for the turbo, I would consider getting one of those on it. Because
so let me ask you this, would you get a San Marco just to ride on the tops to be a turbo saddle, or would you rather get two Power Pros, for instance?
I currently don't have the money to have a bike specifically for the turbo, so my current setup is have one bike that I use both for outside and inside, and I don't spend too much time on the turbo either at the moment, because I don't have... So you need
something more versatile that works for everything, okay?
Yeah.
So let's move on to the Mimic. What were the things that you liked with the Mimic?
It's overall quite cushy. And soft and quite, I can kind of tell that it was made or marketed towards women because it's quite wide at the back, which I liked, so that you don't really feel, it feels stable and you don't rock too much on it. Once I found a position, I could go on forever and I had no issue, but I found that sometimes my soft tissue got a bit out of place and I had to shuffle or move my bibs to get back into the position. And that happens sometimes if the road's a bit bumpy and I got shaken, I need to reposition myself properly.
Any discomfort when you go on the drops? Did you feel any discomfort when you went? No?
No, it was totally fine on the drops.
No loss of sensation?
Yeah, no, the drops were fine. I would say for a ride that's not too bumpy or in which you don't really need to change, or like no gravel, like for example, I would hate that saddle if I did any gravel. But for smooth road riding, I think that was probably one of the commonest once I got settled.
So moving from that one, moving to the Power Pro, why is the Power Pro a step up?
When I got shaken out of position by a bump or a pothole, or when I got out of the saddle for a little climb or something, and I sat down on it, I automatically sat down in a position that I liked, that was comfy, and that wasn't these like 2 or 3 seconds of reshuffling. And could forget that I was on a saddle. It was just, you're sitting down and you don't really need to think about it much. And it was comfortable in all positions. So I did a rather long ride on it. I did about 70k with both sustained climbing, sustained descents, and undulating terrain, and it did well in all of those. But overall, I think it's a very good, all-rounder and quite versatile.
Yeah. How does that compare with this one, with the Stealth Pro? What are your doubts?
That one is definitely harder.
Firmer, like the foam. Yeah.
I don't know. It's wider as well. It's a bit wider, and there's a big, the cutout is massive in the middle. So I didn't feel any pressure. It was comfortable to get on and off, no problem, no need to shuffle. Quite versatile as well, so worked with all kinds of position. It does feel a bit harder. So I'm not sure how that would fare if I did like all day riding.
Yeah.
Or if it's a case of getting used to it by having it on my bike and doing lots of hours on it. That one, I did it for a ride in which I had some like bursts of effort, like pushing quite hard, especially on descents or flat bits. And for racing, I think that one would be my favorite.
Yeah.
It felt like the shape of the on the sides here allowed my legs to move very well.
Yeah.
And if you move towards the nose as well a bit more, which you can do for a short amount of time, like you put a burst or something, it felt very comfortable. So I'd say for all day riding, it would be that one, and for racing, the Pro Stealth.
So if there was a softer Stealth, would you prefer that to the Power Pro?
No, probably not. I think I like it I like it hard. I like it like that.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay, now me. So, but now currently you've got some saddle sores.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And we need to understand if those saddle sores are because I gave you such a detailed protocol where you probably had to ride every day to test them, or if it's something that a saddle created.
Yep.
What do you think?
I'm not sure. Logically, I would say it's something a saddle created, because I'm used to training every day. I used to do that a lot when I was at university last year, the last 2 years. And I'm used to changing my bibs every time, so not reusing a dirty bib, and showering straight after. So I've never had a saddle sore before. I don't know if it's just because I got lucky and didn't, or if because
let me ask you something. Right? Did you try more the Power Pro than the other saddles?
Yes, it's the only saddle I tried for 2 rides.
All right, so you tried more that one than the other saddles.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Power Pro, they did it. If you can show while I talk. So what they did was they got a very nice concept. Okay, and if you show the Mimic as well next to it, the problem with the Power Pro is that the area where you sit, okay, because it has a very large cutout, the summation of those 2 lines, of those 2 kind of rails, is less than the area that you sit on the Mimic, okay?
Yeah.
And this is where the Stealth was really well built, because they actually widened these 2 kind of, let's call them rails, the top rails. They widened those, so you actually have more area, okay, to sit than the Power Pro. The Power Pro has a problem with that, which is those 2 rails kind of sometimes act like little razors, and the soft tissue goes inside and it gets pinched. All right? And so they try to address that. That's the first edition of the Power Pro. They tried to address that. So they came up with a Mimic to address that. And they also came up with a different saddle, which I think works better, which you will have to try as well. Which is which is the power arc. So the power arc, it's the same thing as the Power Pro, but they tapered it, okay? So now it's tapered.
Yep.
It's tapered down. As with the power, you just have things like this, right?
Yeah.
And the power arc, they did that, okay? So it's a more tapered kind of saddle, okay? Which means now, because of that, they actually increase the area on those two things. So this might be a good solution for you, okay? This saddle is a step up from that one, the power, okay? So this might be a good solution. So this is where we're gonna go from now. We're gonna try this one. The shell of the power is the same as the dimension, okay? The Pro logo dimension. It's the same saddle, but the foam is different.
Okay.
That saddle that you have there, if you notice it, it has a hard shell up the canal.
Yep.
Where it meets the foam, okay?
Yep.
That is a massive hindrance, because that is actually what kind of tends to cut the soft tissue. As the soft tissue fills in the gaps, when you meet the hard shell inside, that's going to hurt you. The dimension doesn't have that, so the shell stops, and then everything else is foam. And the power arc is the same thing. Everything that is foam, okay? What they did with the Power Pro is they have the shell going up and then foam to hold the structure of the foam, and that is not very good. So you're going to try the arc and see if you have saddle sores with this one, and the dimension, which is the same as that one, but the shell is different, okay?
Yep.
And all the dimensions are the same because they share the same shell. This is the same, this is the same. And then there's this one, which is a different type of dimension with variable density foam. So it's softer here, it's harder here, and it's even harder here, okay? But unlike the Mimic, it's got the advantage of the pressure release channel. So it could be a good combination for you as well, because you like the Mimic, but you couldn't find that position. And by having this channel and the kind of the Mimic foam that you have with the Mimic saddle, you can maybe get that position, and it's got all the advantages, okay? And then there's the other Stealth, the other brother of the Stealth, which I don't have here because I lent it, which is the Synchros Belcara. So when you come from these, when you come for these, you will also get the Synchros Belcara, which is the same thing, same dimensions, but the foam is different, okay?
Okay.
And it might help you as well. I still have another trick up my sleeve, which is when you're really happy with these saddles, I want you to try time trial saddles on the road bike. Yeah, because so the way I look at saddles is this is a genderless item. You know, it's an inert thing, and you can use it to nail a nail on the wall, or open a can, or you can use it as a bicycle seat, right?
Yeah.
Or as a weapon. So in that sense, I don't see why you shouldn't try time trial saddles on the road bike. And actually, time trial saddles can be very good for your condition, okay? So do you have a time trial bike, actually?
Ish. I have a Planet X aeroframe. It's more or less built right now, but it's heavy and old, and there are things loose in it, which means that when I ride it, it's noisy. I liked riding it. I rode it for the crits as well. It was quite fun. It doesn't count in any way, shape or form as a time trial bike. I just don't have the money to buy one, and I don't do them enough.
Well, a time trial bike is a bike where you do time trials, so...
When I do ride, I like riding on the drops a lot. It's a position that I find sometimes more comfortable, and it's just what I like doing. And especially when I ride with Erin and he is nice and gives me a lead out at the front, so I can just sit on the drops behind. So I guess that's also something to keep in mind, because the saddles that I liked the most were the ones that allowed me to get on the drops most easily.
So it's that rotation. I find it that if you get a saddle that allows that, not allows, because every saddle allows that rotation, but where, you know, it transfers the comfort that you feel while upright to the drops. That's a good saddle, I find it, and that's the main issue with every saddle. Okay, and when I tried the short fit, the San Marco, even tilting it wouldn't sort out my problems, because it would just mess my center of gravity, and I was putting too much force on my shoulders, elbows, hands, and it was just not comfortable in order to avoid that perineal pressure kind of thing. So
can you show me the time trial saddles just to see if you have them handy?
Say again?
Can you show me the time trial saddles?
Sure can.
These are cute. Ooh.
So
okay. Oh, you have the.
So I only have about 20 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. About 15 here. The rest are over there, because I've got all the ISM, and then again some other saddles. For you, I would probably go with the Prologo, the Citero, but I'm concerned with the width of the Citero, and then a very good one is the Cobb 55, and now the new version of the Cobb 55, which is, so they have, so the way they, so let me get the one of, so this is a very famous saddle, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the most popular saddles. It's the ISM 1.0, okay? They make 1.1, they make whatever. So, but this is, I don't know how much this is. I think it's about 60 mil. Where's one?
Yeah.
60 millimeters. 65. So this is 65, okay? Yeah. And for some people that's too wide. Does that, okay? And this is 50. This is 50, okay?
Yeah.
And if you think this is too wide, the 65 will potentially, for me, this is too wide. It will just drive in my sartorius, in my inner thigh, okay?
Yeah.
And so John Cobb made a 55 version. So this is a 55, okay? But it was still wide for some people. So this year they came up with a 38, okay? 38 millimeter. What I like about the Cobbs is that they joined, this is a heavy saddle, okay? Make no mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's a saddle for a specific thing, you know? For time trials where you really have to get comfortable in order to get powerful. And they join this, okay? So they join the rails in the front. So there's no danger of this going, you know? And what you often see is when you do like that, people that have been riding it for a long time will have it, one of the sides is dropped, okay? And you often see lots of riders putting a zip tie here to make it, So what they do is they put a zip tie or a tape to make it thinner, right? So it really is better to just actually buy a saddle with a nose that is not as wide, okay? But this is for another episode. Alright guys, that's it for now. Thank you for watching our case study. But before I go, I'd just like to mention that Zoe touched on a few things that I think are very important. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to cover them in this video. For that reason, I've recorded a complementary video to this one. You can find the link down below, by the way, where I specifically address 3 or 4 notions we should consider when trying to address perineal discomfort in the saddle, and these are more often than not related to saddle design and fitting, not necessarily related to the individual anatomical characteristics. Alright then, that's it for me now. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. This channel is all about science and making knowledge accessible. Ta-ra!